Thanks everyone for joining us today. Glad you're here. Glad you've come to learn. We're ready to give you some great information that I think will really make a difference as you're working with your leadership, your key stakeholders, and they're coming to you asking about global expansion. So we're here to give you information, empower you to make the right decisions, and not make the wrong ones, right? Giving you the right questions to ask. That's our goal. So, a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First of all, I want to thank Linx. That Linx is a global powerhouse company that is an employer of record, but also helps companies build that global infrastructure and has a talent acquisition function that is unlike any other employer of record out there. So we're excited to have Linx sponsor this today and sponsor the entire series. We're going somehow I got muted there. Everyone that's on this recording will receive that, or on this will receive the recording in about 48 hours. As I mentioned, it looks like everyone's chat is working. Drop questions in the chat if you have them as we're going through the presentation. This can be an interactive experience for you. It doesn't just have to be me up here talking. You can certainly drop questions in. I may not be able to get to them during the presentation or during the webinar. We will have a Q&A at the end to get to all of those questions. Nikesh is behind the scenes helping out with that. So he'll be able to get those questions to me should they come up, and we can get to those at the end. We don't have a lot of time together today, but I want to make sure that we get to some of the really good information that's going to help you out if you're responsible for or a part of a team that's trying to expand globally or thinking about expanding globally. Before we get started, I think let's start with a poll. Will you, I know, Nikesh, you have a poll. Let's get this poll out there. I want to get an idea from everybody where you stand, where things are in your world. Here's a poll. What's the number one thing you would fix about your global workforce strategy right now? I know this isn't a comprehensive list, but try to hit some of the highlights. What are some of the things that you would change right now if you could today, because it's something that is really, really hard for your company, difficult for everyone, causing a lot of headaches for you? And keeping up with compliance across different countries, communication, the different time zones can be a real headache sometimes, inconsistent HR processes, retention, all that hard work to hire someone only to see them walk out the door. So retention is important, really, really important. And then onboarding, offboarding globally. Thanks everyone. See your votes popping in. We'll give it another 30 seconds or so. Great. Good to see the feedback. Okay, looks like keeping with compliance across different countries. It is complex. We're going to talk about that today. So it looks like you're in the right place. You've come to the right place, and I'll guide you through for today and for the rest of the series. And let's get started. All right. Thanks for everybody for your feedback on the poll. Appreciate that. So I am going to start us off today with a story. It's a story that might sound familiar to some of you. It may be something you're living right now. Maybe something you've lived through and you've seen it before, right? You know what this story looks like. I want to introduce you to a company called Meridian. Now this is a true story. We've changed the name, so don't look up Meridian out there on the web. This is a made up name for the product. We didn't want to bring in the name of the actual company, but for the purposes of this webinar, we're talking about Meridian. Meridian is a mid-market consumer goods company, about 400 employees. They knew that they needed to expand. There were client needs outside of their current market. In the US, they had needs on the ground for sales, and it was time to grow the company. They were looking to expand into Germany, Brazil, and Philippines. So you think about that. That's a big expansion. You're taking South America, Europe. These are two. Brazil and Germany are complicated countries to hire in, and Philippines. So they knew going in, these are complicated. It's not going to be easy. We can't just hire and wing it. So they did everything right. They hired a consultant. They got the contracts in that they needed. They filed all the tax forms that they needed to, registered benefits, checked all the boxes. This consultant and the EOR that they hired at that time said, here's your checklist. Just follow this checklist and it'll get you everything you need, right? And this is what you need to get off the ground. Every compliance box was checked. And even in this poll that we just ran, compliance was one of the top answers. The benefits were all set up. Everything looked right. And they got their first hires, right? They got those people in the door. Everyone was thrilled. The stakeholders, the leadership, the executive team, they got it off the ground. It's no easy task, right? To suddenly hire in 3 different countries simultaneously and set up all of that compliance piece to make sure that everyone's hired and they're paid correctly. It was great until it wasn't. 6 months later, we had 2 of the 3 regional managers that had left the company. The third one was barely responding, seemed frustrated. The project timelines were being missed. We had employees saying, there were employees saying, I don't feel supported. I don't think the home office knows what's going on. The executive team came back and said, well, we did all of the compliance was there. Everything was there. We had it all laid out. The employer of record that they chose at that time said, hey, you do all these things. It's going to work out well for you. It'll be okay. And suddenly it wasn't. And clearly things were falling apart just 6 months in. That's a tough place to be in. Tough spot, especially with all the work that went into it. And this is what we're here to talk about today. How to ensure that you don't, if you and your teams are responsible for expanding globally, that you're not in this trap and you're not walking into a situation that could ultimately fail. We want to make sure you're successful, and we want to make sure your global teams are successful. So when the executive team called it a compliance problem, that's when Linx stepped in and realized that it wasn't, and that they could help out and make a difference for this organization. Let's put up another poll now that we have this story, told you about this company, where they are. Why don't Nikesh send that second poll up for me? There we go. Which of these options below has actually cost your company money or time in the last 12 months? Where do you, when you think about, and no company is perfect, right? Mistakes happen all the time. Things can be challenging, especially when you're expanding into global markets. But do any of these, and you can pick multiple options here too, where it may be all of these. Where has your company lost money or time in the last 12 months? So losing a key hire to slow onboarding, that's painful. You get through all of that. Delayed market entry due to setup, unexpected tax or payroll penalties. Nobody wants to make that phone call, right? Or send that email that there's extra money that needs to be paid out. Thanks. Good to see these answers coming in. Hopefully everybody can see this poll too. I think you can. I think you can all see it. So we have misclassified workers in a new market, delayed market. Looks like the biggest response is losing a key hire to slow onboarding process. Something I've lived through. My background with about 25 years in talent acquisition and human resources, I've seen it, and that's so frustrating for your talent acquisition team. The calls from the hiring manager, nobody wants to get. Nobody wants that phone call that says, "Where's my new hire?" And they're not going to be there. They're not going to be starting because the onboarding process was taking too long, and they were snatched up by another company, or they found another opportunity that was better or that they thought was better. That's a tough place to be. Thanks for the feedback on this one. So now that we know the story, we've talked about what could go wrong. Let's start talking about some solutions. So we have this compliance myth that everything you do, all those boxes you checked, you did all the right things. You're compliant. You can pay people. They have benefits. That's great, but that's just the floor. That's just the foundation. I use that word a lot with my teams. That's the foundation of what you need to be able to get into that market. It's necessary, but it definitely doesn't cover all the bases. The infrastructure is where this particular company, where Meridian, started to fail, where things started to fall apart. And you could see that within just 6 months. Some of it probably started to happen even sooner than that. But for the purpose of this, we're looking at that 6-month mark. And it's so critical in new countries to get off the ground and do it well, right? You have your brand you're trying to build, and you work really hard to build that brand in that market. So it's important to ensure that you don't jeopardize that. That the infrastructure pieces that were identified as areas that needed attention included a clear authority. Who makes the decision? Who has the authority to make decisions in these markets? Something that particular employee of record at the time in that company, that consultant didn't talk about with the client, with Meridian and Meridian's leadership team. Having localized onboarding and HR support that is in place when they're ready to launch or close to that time, right? Making sure that people have someone to go to who understands the market, understands what's happening in that market, and can get to them quickly. Local performance management, cross-cultural training for hiring managers, making sure that when these hiring managers are onboarding, training, and providing performance feedback, they understand how to do that, what makes sense for the market, and that it's a consistent feedback, and that they understand from a cultural perspective how to best manage and how to best lead these teams. Just popping in US-centric programs and processes and methods may work for some markets, but not all. And it's important to have those conversations just before or right as you're launching your new markets. And again, that accessible in-country HR support is one of the most critical pieces of the foundation that a lot of companies are lacking or feel like is an afterthought or can be done a little bit later, and then later is too late. We're looking to build the whole house with this infrastructure piece. So you have that foundation, the whole house, building that whole house around that foundation. It's what's going to ensure that those teams are supported and successful, and that growing the business is truly that, growing the business and not just putting headcount in a country. The next piece that's we want to talk about is what I call the AIC Framework. And I love an acronym. We'll break this down. And I'm giving you this framework today because I want to give you, again, the tools so that you can be equipped with what it takes to walk into a meeting with your senior leadership, with the head of HR, your CEO, COO, whoever it might be, a regional head, the new person who's going to be responsible for launching in a country, and you have the right questions to ask, and you're starting the conversation from a place of knowledge and a place of authority. So let's start off with authority. That's the A in the AIC framework. This framework helps you just understand in a specific region. Let's take Brazil, for example. That was one of the locations where Meridian expanded. In Brazil, who has the real power in that country? Who can make decisions there? What reporting lines match the org chart? And I think an org chart probably sounds simple, like, oh, there's a dotted line here and a straight line here. That sounds simple, and it sounds easy and like general knowledge. And it's great. It's important, right? You have to have that org chart, but you have to have discussions about who do these people actually report to? Who do these new hires actually report to? Who's the decision maker in these markets? How, if there is any ambiguity, if anything's unclear, that can lead to a lot of frustration, and people leave because they don't feel like that the company has their act together, or that they have really thought that through. And that's such a simple thing to put in place or to talk about and have conversations about when you decide to expand globally. Once you get all that compliance in place, this is sort of that next phase, right? Or something that you do in tandem with putting all the compliance pieces in place. So authority is a big one. This is where we see a lot of companies start to fall apart, or regional expansions start to break down. The I is the intelligence. This intelligence, these are the people systems, right? The brains behind everything that happens, all these systems that can ensure that infrastructure that you've put in place is working properly. Is onboarding localized by country? Are the performance and compensation tools that you're using, are they right? Are they correct? Or are you in this market realizing suddenly we're paying our compensation is 25% below the real marketplace? What's really happening? Linx works with companies with real-time data. Usually with compensation and benefit data, it is dated. If you're going to pull that from a firm that gives you a consultant to help with all the compliance, and they say, oh, here's all of this salary data. Salary data is nice. It certainly helps. It helps you with benchmarks, but it doesn't give you real time on the street hiring right now information. It is typically a 6-month lag between getting that survey data and that's at best case scenario, and getting that survey data to an organization. Having a partner that understands the market, is hiring currently in that market, that can mean the difference between you having a budget that is reasonable and having a budget that's unreasonable. And it's important, critically important, when you're launching a global market, to have real benefit and real salary information. That can make or break you, especially when you're trying to build that brand. So these people systems and this intelligence is really important, and having someone who's an HR support person in country is critical as well. I know US really well. I have a ton of experience in other countries, but I will never be as knowledgeable about the Philippines as an HR business partner who's been in the Philippines and lived there and been there their whole lives working. They're going to know that market and those laws better than I ever could. So really critical that you have that HR person on the ground. So this intelligence, the AIC framework, is important and something for you to talk about. Last is communication. This is where we see another big piece of the breakdown. Are managers trained for the feedback? I mentioned this earlier in the webinar. Do they know where the time zones are? Do they know how to work with employees and escalate outside of the management? If in a lot of other cultures, and I've seen this across the board many times, the manager will say, well, nobody's saying anything. Everything should be fine, right? Everything should be good to go because I'm not hearing any complaints. Silence doesn't mean that everything's great. It doesn't mean that that employees agree. It usually means they're a little bit afraid of speaking up, and they don't feel like they're getting the support they need potentially. And this can be cultural. This can just be somebody who's a new employee and doesn't want to rock the boat. But silence doesn't mean that everything's going well. You really, as an organization expanding globally, need to make sure that you're asking the questions about how communication is happening, and that it's happening in a consistent way, and that you can track it. Because being able to track how this is happening is really important as well. So the AIC framework. I will also be sharing at the end of this webinar a tool that everyone can take away with them. So don't feel like you have to get a bunch of screenshots here. I'm going to give you a tool, and you'll have, of course, the recording that you can use walking into these meetings that will break down this AIC framework for you and give you the questions that you need to ask that you can answer ahead of time, so you can walk into a meeting and be well prepared and look amazing. You can look like a rock star going into these meetings, knowing that you have this scorecard that I'll give you at the end. These are some questions. If you're in a global expansion, I want to give you a few questions right now that you can ask yourself, or that you can ask others if you're walking into a meeting. If you're a regional manager in the new country, needs to approve a vendor contract tomorrow, what do they do? Who would he or she route it to, or who would they route it to? What happens? It's a simple question. It sounds like it's a no-brainer, right? That they should just send it to their hiring manager, or they should send it to the VP. But maybe procurement needs to be involved. Maybe there's somebody in finance in this new country that needs to take a look at it. This is one of those simple questions. You feel like if you ask this in a meeting, it probably would get a simple answer, but I bet you would have 4 or 5 different answers coming from 4 or 5 different people. So this is one good question you could ask if you're looking at a global expansion. Next question. That's related to the authority. Next, for the intelligence piece. When your newest hire in a new country has a payroll question or HR concern, who do they go to? Who answers that question? Are they sending an email to somebody? Does it take 48, 72 hours, maybe never, to respond? You want to make sure that you have a partner, an employer of record, a partner in country who can get those responses back to those employees quickly. When employees are ghosted, nothing is more frustrating, especially when you're talking about benefits or payroll, or somebody who's a new employee trying to get their grounding in a new organization. How long does it take to get an answer? Sometimes you can even test it out yourself. I found that jumping in and testing it as if I were the employee, trying to get that information, is the best way to find out what actually works and what doesn't work. So little pro tip for you there to think about is do it yourself. Take the same steps an employee would take when they are going through that journey, whatever it is, whether it's asking an HR question, trying to do the onboarding, going through an interview, trying to get something approved. Walk through the steps and walk in their shoes, and I bet you'll be surprised at what you find. And the last one is communication. Let's talk about the performance review cycle. It's so important that you have this dialed in, yes, for your organization, but definitely for your new hires, and especially new hires in a new country. This may be something that needs to be maybe modified early days, or enhanced a little bit with more communication, more touch points when you're expanding in a new country. Do your managers know how to provide feedback to employees in markets where maybe direct feedback is a little uncommon, or they need to learn how to provide feedback that's going to be better received? You could talk to someone all day and give them feedback, but if they're not receiving it and acting on it, then it's pointless, right? You've wasted your time. So having conversations about what that communication path is going to be, and how you roll that out, and then how you sustain it and ensure consistency, those are all key factors in making sure that you have a successful launch in these countries. I hope this framework is giving you a little bit to think about as well as we walk through this. let's get, I'm going to throw another poll out there. I know we're getting a little close to our time, and I want to make sure we get this last poll out before we move on. Let's see, Nikesh, can you throw that up for us? There you go. Thank you. So we're getting close to the end of the session. When you think about everything you've heard so far, what's your next step after today's session? Do you want to talk to someone at Linx? Want to share this with your leadership team, which is great. That's what I was hoping for, because I want to make sure that this is information that is real helpful for you. Oh, if you want to be a guest, that's fantastic too. I would love it. If you're evaluating employer of record solutions, Linx is a great place to start. They have so much experience and can definitely help you out. I also have a lot of experience with EORs. I have worked with many in my years in human resources and talent acquisition, so I know what great looks like. Mediocre and really bad. I've had some really, really bad experiences. So it's good to hear that everyone wants to have some hand in using this information moving forward. And again, we'll take a look at that scorecard as well. Thanks for sharing this poll. Thanks for the feedback, everyone. Mentioned early on, compliance is the floor. We're trying to build a whole house for you. We're trying to help you understand what it takes to be really successful in a new market. I'm trying to give you the tools so that you don't have to live through the mistakes that I've seen or that other teams have made. So you can be that rock star in your company and be the one that really stands out. Linx has some great exposure, as I mentioned, across multiple countries. They can help you in 160 different countries, not just get that compliance piece in. While that's important, it's critical. You have to have it. Nobody wants to end up in court or not be able to pay somebody. Nobody wants fines. You have to have that compliance piece. Where Linx sets themselves apart is that they are also helping with that talent acquisition piece, and they know that infrastructure, the intelligence, the communication factors that are most important. That AIC framework is what's going to take that EOR experience or the employer record experience from just being that compliance piece to being that whole house, the house that protects your employees, the ones where they can feel safe and they can feel like they can do their best work. Because if they're worried about who's not answering their emails, or how they're going to get their benefit questions answered, or what happens if there's an emergency. This is, I'll throw another story out there for you. There was a situation where someone had a serious personal emergency in South Africa, I believe it was a country, South Africa. I was working with Linx at the time, and had it been any other employer of record, I don't think this person would have had help in the way that they got it and how quickly they got it. Linx jumped in, personally sent someone to help this person within a few hours on the ground, got them the assistance they needed, worked with other authorities to help this individual, like real hands-on. And when you're sitting in a human resources chair, or you're a manager in a different country, and you know somebody who's been an employee for you for a long time needs help right away, and you're stuck, you can't be there for them in the way that they need it, to know that there's somebody on the ground that can give them that support, it means the world, not only to you as a manager, because you need to make sure that they're okay, but to that individual. Nothing can compare to having somebody help you out when you're in a really desperate situation. So, and that's a very dramatic and extreme story, but it happens, right? And then there's everything in between. Even the minor questions can pick away at somebody's experience in an organization and really start to erode that experience that you've worked so hard to build, and and erode on the employees' work as well, and possibly cause them to not be as productive, or not be as efficient, or not help the customer when they need it. All right. what mentioned the AIC diagnostic. I think, Nikesh, are we going to drop that in for everybody before we go to Q&A? I think we are. I think we'll put that in the chat for everyone. We'll definitely get it out to everybody via email. I think we should have your emails, but there'll be a link. And Nikesh, if you're talking, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're on or not. I want to move to the Q&A. We have an expert on with us, Mayank. I know you're out there too. If anybody has any questions, he is our Director of Client Services for Asia Pacific at Linx and has a lot of knowledge about the organization and what they can provide, and also just knowledge about an EOR. If you just have general questions, it doesn't have to be about Linx. It could be general questions that you may have about the EOR experience. We answered some of the questions today, and I'm also going to put up, while I have a chance, let me show you the diagnostic tool that you're going to get. Give me just a minute, and I will show that to you. I'm going to stop the share so I can share this tool with you really quickly. Just want everybody to take a look at it so you can see it. Whoops. Should be able to see this. Let me move this off the screen. This tool is, okay, should be able to see this. This is what you'll get, this readiness scorecard. It breaks it down in 3 pillars that I mentioned earlier: authority, infrastructure. This is going to be the intelligence, and then we have the communication. So when you have this scorecard, again, you can do it before you go into a meeting. You could take a look at all of these questions, rate yourself, rate your company. Where is your company right now? And it's a fillable form. So you could fill this in. You could email it to someone on your leadership team and say, hey, I had this diagnostic tool. It really helped me start to think about where we might be doing really well, what we might have really well dialed in, and where we might need some help, where we need to have some additional conversation. So this tool is going to be sent out to everyone who's on the webinar. I'm not gatekeeping anything here. It will be on the website. So if you want to send, let's say you're talking to a colleague or you're in another meeting and you want to get this in the hands of one of your team members, you can send them out to the linxap.com website and they can get this tool for free. You can share the link, but it's, I think, a really good tool, again, to start the conversation. And I'm trying to give everybody here some good information to walk into meetings with, because I've certainly been in this situation where I didn't know where to start. And I was tasked with trying to, myself, my team, other team members, groups of people were tasked with trying to expand into a new country when we didn't have the right tools. We didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have the questions about who is a person of authority, who has all the information employees need, and how do we communicate it. So I'm hoping that this gives it. I see the readiness scorecard. Thanks for sending that out. I appreciate it. Okay, everybody. I'm all set for today. That's everything that we have to share for this one. I hope that you come back for the next meeting. We have another one. We're going to have one every month until October. That's what we have planned so far. So each month is going to, the last Thursday of every month, going to be a different topic. So make sure that you share this link with your former colleagues, current colleagues, anybody in your network who you think might benefit from these conversations. We'll dive into the financials, EOR versus entity. We'll take a look at what's happening, what's new in the employer of record sphere, that world. We'll take a look at what's new and what you need to know about, some of the pitfalls to avoid. So lots of conversations, and I'll have guest speakers coming on too. So it'll be a lot of fun to have everybody join us in the future. And any questions, Nikesh? I don't see anything in the chat, but does anybody else have any questions? Okay. All right. Well, I'll wrap up for today. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you joining. Great to have you here.